The Primarchs, a tragic galaxy-shaking experiment gone horribly wrong, scattered through the void like a failed batch of cosmic test subjects. These aren't just any warriors. These are walking, talking demigods, engineered to be the pinnacle of war, brimming with impossible strength, tactical brilliance, and just enough fatal flaws to guarantee disaster. Ripped from their creator, they fell across the stars, each trapped in a new nightmare. But why were they thrown to the winds of fate? And what cruel design ensured that most of them would either fall, break, or be devoured by the very war they were built to win? And was there ever a way out of the cycle of misery? Or was suffering always part of the plan? The Primarchs. 20, well, technically 21, but that's a whole other issue. Genetically engineered super beings, handcrafted by the Emperor himself to be the generals of his Grand Crusade. Each of them is the son of the Emperor, who is the master of the universe. So, being the son of the Emperor and a 10-foot-tall demigod with psychic superpowers and tactical genius might seem like a sweet deal. In reality, every single one of them got the short end of the stick, one way or another. There are definitely some mysteries out there in their lives behind the reasons for their tragic fate. And these mysteries bring us to our possible theories about their tragic lives to find out the reasons for their suffering. Theory 1. The Emperor built them to suffer. To begin with, from the very start, their suffering was by design. The Emperor, for all his supposed wisdom, was shockingly inept when it came to parenting. Emotionally distant father figure doesn't even begin to cover it. He created 20, well, technically 21, but let's not get into that, genetically perfect sons, each one stronger, faster, and smarter than any mortal. He made them to be the ultimate warriors, strong, smart, unbeatable. But then, either by accident or some messed up plan, he flung them across the galaxy like a handful of confetti at a wild party. No guidance, no protection, no backup, just a cruel gamble that they'd survive the madness of the universe and, if they were lucky, find their way back to him, stronger and ready for whatever came next. When they finally found their way back, hoping for answers, guidance, or even the faintest gesture of affection, what did they find? Instead of a warm embrace, a safe haven, or a fatherly touch, they were shoved headfirst into the meat grinder of the Great Crusade. There was no time for joy, no time for contemplation. The Emperor had no interest in seeing his sons thrive, only in using them as living weapons to conquer the stars. No options to be artists, philosophers, or even thinkers, only warriors. The Emperor had no room for peace in his empire, only bloodshed. Even Vulcan, the most peaceful and introspective of them all, was repeatedly tortured, physically and mentally, and sent back into battle, because peace, in the Emperor's grand design, was just another word for war with extra steps, a cruel joke in a galaxy on fire. Then there's the issue of chaos corruption. The Emperor, for all his supposed foresight, knew from the beginning that some of his sons would fall. He knew the dangers of the warp, the seductive whispers of chaos, and the weaknesses embedded deep within the very nature of his sons. And in some twisted way, it seems that he designed them to fail, to fall apart, almost as if their flaws were built into their very DNA. Take Kurz, for example, born to be a walking nightmare, his mind twisted from the start, with visions of horror that would drive anyone mad. Angron was doomed to suffer eternally, his mind shackled by rage and pain, before he even got his first hug, never knowing what peace could feel like. Lorgar, destined to worship in a universe that despised religion, left to kneel before gods who had no interest in his devotion, a pawn in their game of cosmic chess. The list goes on, each son created with a purpose, but one that was doomed to unravel, each flaw a nail in the coffin of their fate. The Emperor likely needed them to break, to fracture and shatter, because in their destruction, he could prove his supremacy and solidify his control over mankind. In a universe that has always been at war, a galaxy where betrayal and death are constant companions, what's a little more brokenness? What's a little more suffering? After all, what is a god without a few shattered mirrors to reflect his greatness? The Emperor's plan was never about creating a perfect, harmonious empire, or giving his sons a chance to lead humanity to a golden age. No, they were nothing more than tools. Tools meant to be used, then discarded once their purpose was served. Their destruction, just another step in the Emperor's unrelenting march toward total dominion over a galaxy that would never know peace. Theory 2. The galaxy itself hates them. Maybe it wasn't just the Emperor's fault. Maybe the galaxy itself harbors some deep cosmic vendetta against these poor superhuman souls. If you look at their track records, it's impossible to ignore how tragically consistent their fates are. Ferrus, Manus, deceived by his own best friend, a brutal betrayal that would haunt any soul. Sanguinius, murdered by Horus, his own brother, in one of the most heartbreaking moments of the Great Heresy. Guilliman, slashed across the throat and left in a coma for 10,000 years, his body broken while his empire crumbled. Then again, there's Angron, so consumed by rage that rational thought is a distant memory, trapped in an eternal cycle of violence. Kurz, hunted down and executed like a rabid dog, his end fitting his grim nature but no less tragic. Lorgar, a zealot to the core, worshipping chaos only to be discarded when the gods got bored of him. Even those who technically survived aren't in much better shape. Some are in stasis, trapped in the warp, or simply too broken to function. The only exceptions is Guilliman, who woke up to find his father's empire in ruins, and Lion L. Johnson, who's been on an extended nap while everything goes to hell around him. But these exceptions only reinforce the pattern. The galaxy took one look at these near-invincible beings and decided they didn't deserve a happy ending. Whatever force rules the cosmos seemed determined to break them, to rob them of any hope for peace, redemption, or even survival. Theory 3. The Primarchs were never supposed to win. Here's where things get really bleak. What if the Primarchs were never meant to win? What if they were doomed from the very beginning, not just by the universe, but by the very hand that created them? The Emperor, an immortal psychic god being, who can peer through the fabric of time and space, was no stranger to the forces that would shape the galaxy. He knew all too well about chaos, the dangers of the warp, and the inevitable fate that awaited his sons. He saw the potential for betrayal, corruption, and destruction long before the first blade was drawn. So why bother creating them at all? Why go through the enormous effort of crafting these genetically enhanced warlords, each with their own divine power, intelligence, and strength, only to watch half of them fall to chaos and the other half meet grisly, tragic ends? Why set the stage for such a blood-soaked disaster? The answer, as grim as it is, might be simpler than we'd like to admit. They were tools. Tools meant to unify the Imperium, to serve as instruments of war and power, but ultimately, just tools for the Emperor's grander scheme. He didn't create them to be the eternal champions of humanity or to lead the galaxy into a golden age. No, they were stepping stones. They were pawns in a game far bigger than their individual fates. The Emperor knew exactly what he was doing when he built them, and he had a plan, an ugly, horrific one. He engineered the Primarchs to fulfill a purpose, and once that purpose was served, they were expendable. Horus's rebellion, completely predictable. The betrayal of brother against brother? Expected. The Imperium tearing itself apart in an epic struggle? Part of the Emperor's master plan. Chaos was not an unexpected threat. It was built into the design. The Emperor knew that, in the end, the Primarchs would shatter the Imperium they fought so hard to build. They were never meant to be the future of humanity. No, they were the tools to push the Emperor's agenda of ultimate power and control. Once they had fulfilled their roles, whether through heroic sacrifice or tragic betrayal, the galaxy would chew them up and spit them out, as it always does. The Imperium, like any great empire, would rise only to fall, and the Primarchs, no matter how godlike they seemed, were simply the means to that end. As we already know, each Primarch was created in a lab, stolen by chaos, thrown into a war they never signed up for, manipulated by their own father. And if they didn't die in some horrific way, they probably ended up lost in the warp or put into a coma. Does that sound like a good time? Absolutely not. No matter how powerful, intelligent, or noble they might be, they're still just pawns in the grimdark nightmare that is Warhammer. 40,000 K. And the worst part? They don't even get a choice. Their fate was written before they took their first breath. What do you think? Were the Primarchs doomed from the start? Or could they have actually forged a better future if things had gone differently? And which Primarch had it the worst? Let's hear the theories in the comments. See you in the next video.